We have some lovely people here to help. So I'm just going to introduce Sam. Sam is the current director here of the Umbrella Centre. We have Finch, who is a community member from the Armidale community, member of the ANTAR, so the Armidale Reconciliation Group here. And we have Larissa Ahoy, who is also an Anna local community member and also works with us here at the Umbrella Centre.
Okay, thanks everyone. Look, just a little bit of context to why this situation is on today. I teach in my units some of the disadvantaged units about disadvantaging Australian social work and how to deliver services in a way that's fair and just for everyone in the community. And I had some students ask me about the referendum, and instead of responding, I approached the UNE Centre in Kate, and I met with Dom and Kate here and talked about doing this globally. And also there's some people joining us online as well, so welcome to everyone. I'd just like to start off with some questions, and please, we're going to open it up a little bit later. Questions, if we've got any for the panel. It's a wonderful opportunity to ask questions. But I just wanted to start off with Kate, or anyone on the panel, if you could just explain to us a little bit about the history of the referendum. I know that things like this don't happen, out of thin air, and that there's a bit of context. So if you could just help us with that, and if you could just tell me when you want slides. Thanks.
Okay. Well, if we just go to the next slide, please, and we'll come back to this Uluru Statement from the Heart, because we haven't just arrived here now. There's been a long history in Australia of attempts to approach the government of the time to ask for a voice or something similar. So an opportunity for Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people to be able to speak to government directly about themselves and what they need. Now, this list up here on the screen is by no means exhaustive, and it's only a snapshot of some of the things that have occurred in the 20th century. So I decided not to go back and look at everything because we'd be here for hours. But essentially, some of the really important occurrences, which I don't know, are any of you familiar with these on the screen? Yeah, some of them, that's great. So one of the very well-known ones is the 1937 event where William Cooper actually organised a petition which he took to the Australian Parliament and asked them to present it to the then King. He did a lot of work and that request was denied. The government of the day decided that it wouldn't go to the King. Okay, so that's just one in the 20th century. Then in 1963, we had another petition from the UNE people. It was called the Yirrkala petition, and it's a well-known petition. I'm sure you may have seen pictures of it. A bit like the Uluru Statement from the Heart, it was a document with artwork around it or in it. And those people came from East Armland. Again, that one did not get up, it was not successful. Then in 1972, so after the 1967 referendum, the Larrakia people presented a petition to Queen Elizabeth. So we had a change of monarchy by then, from monarch, from the King to the Queen. Again, that one was not successful. In 1988, we had the Barunga Statement, and this was the first one that actually saw some change, and that was through Bob Hawke, and it led to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission being legislated into being, okay? And that's just the 20th century, right? So this is not a new thing. This comes in a long line of repeated attempts by Indigenous or First Nations people to ask to think about their own matters for themselves, which leads us back to the Uluru Statement. But does someone else want to talk about that? I was just going to add that you see all those petitions are to the King or Queen or Parliament. The difference with the Uluru Statement is that it's to the people of Australia. And it was the end of a process that the coalition government had agreed to support of having consultations around the country for Aboriginal people, not necessarily people who are already in leadership positions in national organisations, but people from that area. And that led to the meeting of Uluru. So it was addressed to the people of Australia. It was presented via giving it to Parliament for the people. And Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister at the time, and within 2 days he said, "I'm going to give it." So it is a very different thing from those which were appealing to the establishment of the authority. This one is an appeal to ordinary Australians, and that's why we're holding this devotion.
Anyone else?
Can we take us back to the statement?
Sure.
The Uluru Statement. How many of you have seen this particular, the other way?
Oh, the other way, sorry.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of you have seen it? You've read it? Wonderful. We have copies here, which you can read. But as Bar mentioned, it is actually the first document that has been written directly to all of us as Australians, which is really important. But what shouldn't be forgotten is the years of consultation that went into this document. Again, it wasn't just dreamt up by the people who were there when this was created at Uluru. There are years of consultations that went into it around the country. Thousands of people were consulted, and then those people elected delegates to go to Uluru and represent them in the negotiation around the wording of this particular statement. Okay. And what I would say on this is because, as you would all know, there are a number of prominent First Nations people who don't agree with this. They say we were not part of that particular statement. What I would say though is that over 250 people have signed this. You can see the signatures around the the edge of it, which is really important. That's a lot of people, and polls at the moment are saying that up to 85% of First Nations people alone support this statement and support going to referendum to ask the Australian people to not just legislate, but to put into the Constitution a voice to Parliament. I think that's important because there is a lot of media out there which is suggesting that there are a lot of people who don't agree with it, but in fact the evidence shows us, the real evidence shows us that, that's not entirely the case. That's not the case at all. Anyone? No.
Yeah, just on the voice and the support matter, I suppose. That's typical, that's normal. We're all different people, we all have different perspectives. It's no different. I have members of my family that don't support it, and I have a lot of my family that do personally. We have friends and, community members. So there's always going to be some dissent. That is very normal. This is not unusual, and it's not something to be afraid of to have that discussion and that dissent across one community. Consensus never has ever existed. I would guess.
Yeah, there's something on the says that we all got our own opinions. There were over, as Kate said, there were over 250 signatures, and only a small minority declined it. But we are the same as everybody else. We all that bit long. There were 500 nations, different nations in Australia that make the country up. But we all not gonna agree on everything. So,
So my next question to you then is, what do you understand about the Constitution, Australia's Constitution? Do you know much at all? Do you know what it is? Anyone? Guides the laws, yeah, that's good. So it's literally a document which records the rules, if you like, to make it a very simplistic statement around how the country operates. But the reason we all have to vote to make changes or to amend or to modify or to add to the Constitution is because it's not a document that belongs to the government. It belongs to the people. We all have ownership over that document, which is why you're being asked, we're being asked to vote in this referendum.
Yeah, one thing, you're all accountants here, which is you're learning a lot. Last week was the annual major politics lecture, and the speaker was Professor Anne Toomey, who is a constitutional lawyer, and she had some wonderful stories about the Constitution. You would probably all know that it was when the country federated, so it was in 1901 when it came in, and then we became Australia as opposed to the separate colonies. And it was very much only men were involved, so that's interesting to for women here. And it very much was about this being a white country, and that was in the Constitution. It was part of it. But she also made a very strong point that it is not a sacred document. They go on in America about my Constitution was. This isn't. It is a working thing to guide the parliaments, but it is determined by the people. But all it's saying in the Constitution is there shall be a defensible state. It doesn't say, oh, it's going to be army and how many people and what weapons are they going to have. It's just the Parliament can make laws about us having a defence force, and Parliament will decide whatever they want. So, and it's a document that can be changed, and the founding fathers set it up so that it could be changed quiet, but only by people who were then only men, but now they're women, and now they're all sorts of people.
So I'm to visit the lecture, and now Barb is probably going to make me less smart because all of my hot ideas came from that lecture. It was a great lecture, and unfortunately it wasn't recorded. I did half of it. Yeah. Don't worry, I'll have a word to that head of college. But it was a fantastic lecture. She made some fantastic points. I unfortunately sat through constitutional law twice. It was that interesting when I studied here. She just had my mind blown. Like there was a lot that I didn't know, and it was a fantastic lecture. She did say that when it was drafted, the founding fathers, the men, they really kind of had this lifespan. They kind of pictured in their head, they're like, if this document lasts to 50 years into the future, we will have done like a really top job at writing this thing, and we're 120 years down the track. So it was never their intention for it to go unchanged. There are mechanisms built into the Constitution for it to be changed. It's absolutely really difficult. Needing a majority of people in the majority of states. Fun fact, the territories are not states, so they're not counted. That was one of the things I learned. They do count towards the overall vote, but of course that won't change the Constitution. So that was really interesting. Yeah. What else did she say? She's so much great stuff, really. But that was my main takeaway. People do kind of put the Constitution on this pedestal like it's not supposed to be changed just willy-nilly, and it isn't, and it hasn't, and it's not, as Kate's pointed out when she started, it's not like this has just come about, a couple of months ago or even a couple of years ago. It's been something in the works for a really long time, so a lot of educated people, Indigenous people have been part of this whole process leading up to where we are now.
Excuse me, can I just interrupt there?
Sure.
The audio is almost inaudible. Sounds like you're in a 44-gallon drum. Could I get the presenter to move closer to Louise's laptop so we can hear what's being said?
Oh dear. Okay.
You got half a dozen messages in the chat there as well.
Oh, okay. I haven't been monitoring that.
That is
Just have a look.
nice. Let me just have a little
Thank you.
look.
Yeah, I had.
Much better to talk to.
I know. Sorry.
That's right. Just trying to.
Is that better?
Does that help? What about that? How does that sound?
Thank you. Does that?
It's about, Louise, have you got your microphone open and you are listening to the presenter as well through the computer?
I've got a microphone, but the computer's connected to the big screen, which I had.
No, just wondering where, because there's an echo. Maybe if you mute your
This one?
computer, we might be able to hear the presenter more clearly.
Oh,
They're using a different input.
Mute it there.
No, don't mute that because that's those
Okay.
things. So just escape for a minute.
I have to stop sharing.
Just go there. No, you don't have to stop sharing. Just minimise that for a minute and come down here and turn that off.
Ah, okay. Oh God, where's the? Sorry, everyone. We're just trying to. Oh, where's the? I don't even know where the.
Oh, we have lost our
Mouse.
mouse.
Oh, where's it gone?
Just thought maybe.
Where's the mouse gone? Oh, no.
Oh, there it is.
It's got it.
Here back.
Oh, there it is. It's over here. Is that better?
Okay, does that help? That help?
Is that better?
Yeah, you need to talk a little bit longer.
Okay. I'm just going to get the slides back. Yeah. Is that? Can you hear us talking now? Kate, can you talk?
Can you hear us now? Is that better?
That's a lot clearer. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all it was.
I do apologise for that.
We may be good at some aspects, but what is not necessarily our what skill. Maria.
Just gonna.
For those of you who listened to that lecture, which I didn't listen to, what I was wondering in regard to the Constitution, part of the issues that we've heard in the last little while is the difference between a symbolic preamble and the changing of words. Could you explain the difference?
Do you want
Yeah.
All the political parties agreed that there be a statement in the preamble that said that First Nations people were actually here when the colonies were on. And that was proposed, and they said, oh, everybody would agree with that, and that could well be true. But at the same time, we know there is a gap between the life expectancy, health, education, all those issues that are lived by people in this community. And it would make no difference to that. Just say, oh yeah, they were here first. So what is needed is some way of addressing through law that closing the gap, those issues that are really important. So, and the whole process coming up to the Uluru Statement, the stage of Aboriginal people, okay, we think about how you want to be represented in the Constitution. We know you want to be noticed. How shall we do it? And they came back with that beautiful statement that said, yes, we want to be in the Constitution and we want that to be recognised by us as being a voice. Really simple. And that's what we've been asked to go to. I'm sure you have one question.
Yeah, look, that was my other takeaway from that lecture. So Professor Judy talked about symbolism and recognition. And a lot of arguments I hear is that we recognise Indigenous people in the 67 referendum. They recognised us as human beings, hurrah. But this is different. This is different in the way that they're asking for action behind the words. Put your money where your mouth is. So it's one thing to say that I recognise, but what does that look like? And she talked a lot about that. Do you truly recognise someone if you say, I see you, I can see what the problems here are. You don't give them a voice to actually communicate, and you don't listen to what they're saying. So at the end of the day, the recognition that this referendum is asking, is putting to the people is, do we truly recognise them, and are we willing to actually listen to what they have to say? Because it's only until we actually listen to what our First Nations people are saying and we give them a voice where they're actually heard, can we truly say that we recognise our people.
You've heard a lot from us lot up here, but I think we're really interested to know what you're hearing from, maybe not what you feel, but what you're hearing people say, so that we can maybe respond to that, because I could go on and like cement forever, talking, but it's not much of a conversation if I don't know what sort of things you're hearing and you would like answers to. So, is that okay, Kate? Sort of prompting to see if people, even if it might not be your own opinion.
I've got a bit of a question about some hearings and conflicting things about yes and no. So, and just trying to get an idea of, I guess, the no side. Why are there Indigenous Australians voicing that they don't want it? Maybe we can start there.
So some of my mob know people, and they I feel that they haven't got all the information. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories that took this pass, that we're going to take all the land, we're just going to take over. So all businesses, landholders, I even read something about the United Nations says that we're going to see sovereignty that should be a yes. So there are a lot of theories as to why, but I feel that they're not educated enough to just read up on it, read from where everybody has come together to create this statement, the answers, the questions in the pamphlet on what we've got sitting there. And I just feel that there's always going to be conspiracy theories, and some of them want all or nothing. And with the 67 referendum, that was 15 years ago. And I personally think we need to take steps to get to where we want to be. This is a step forward. This is, I believe, a hope for my grandkids. I'll probably be dead and gone by the time we get to where I want to be, but it's a step forward nonetheless.
Yeah, can I just add to that and say there will always be people who want to vote yes and those who vote no. But again, I would say to people, as a university, which is what I belong to and what you belong to as students of university, let's go look at the evidence. And in the statement it says, this is what the Aboriginal people have asked us. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making. This is not about treaties or anything else. This particular part in the Constitution is about enshrining that in the Constitution, not what comes after. Who knows what might come after, that will be decided down the track, but it's what we're voting on is the process. Do we have a body which will speak to Parliament, which can supervise that process? And I think that's the important thing. There is lots of information out there, as you have said, there's lots of conspiracy theories and so on, but we need to just demystify it and take it back to what it really is, which is important. Maria.
Before we move on, sorry Maria, I just have one final thing to add to answer your question before we move on, sorry. I think it's really important to give some thought as well in terms of from our Indigenous representatives, those voices out publicly campaigning for no. Like anything, no matter whether you're on the yes or the no, politics comes into play. These people that have voices that get on the media and are on our TVs and are adamantly campaigning either way, at the end of the day, this is a political matter, and politics and your alignment to politics comes into it.
I was actually going to sort of in a similar way to the, and looking at some of the short history that you actually brought up there. In the people that I mix with, the original people who were saying no, it comes about them generally having a distrust of the process, the political process itself, because it hasn't done anything for them in the past. And people who are themselves Aboriginal people who have been successful in the political process, and by what means and how that has occurred, and whether that has been fair and just and will save everybody along the process. So there is a legitimate no. I understand that no, but that also is something that I see as being, if you like, only something that an Aboriginal person can be saying no for.
Yeah, and just on that then, if I may, unless someone wants to have something to say, I just wanted to link then the reason why we want, or this is seeking something in the Constitution as opposed to what we've had before. Because a lot of it, you'll hear a lot of discussion out there is, well, why can't we just legislate it? But this up here are the previous attempts at legislating voices to the government, okay? And that's the problem, is legislation can be changed by whoever happens to be in power. And that's what this is. This is like a ping pong match up here. One side of government puts something in and the next side chucks it out. And then the next side puts in something else and then they chuck it out. Which is why, right down here to the last one, which is the one that I mostly remember because of my generation, is the ATSIC, the organisation ATSIC. That's why this Uluru statement, this one, is actually seeking for it to be constitutionally enshrined so that this ping pong match cannot continue. Yes, now Laura, I think you had a question.
I just have a, so I do have a question before that, but something I learned from the session we had with PPC, Joe Fraser, who's been left off, but this enshrining it into the Constitution doesn't necessarily mean that the future government can't minimise this, correct?
That's exactly right. And someone else might like to speak to that, but essentially, you're right. All we're being asked to vote on is, do we agree or disagree with enshrining this thing called a voice to Parliament in our Constitution? What happens after that is going to depend upon a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that comes back to the other big discussion point out in the public, which is we don't have detail. How many times have we heard that? We do have the detail. It says that once we create we vote on to put a voice recognising Aboriginal people into the Constitution. Now, what that looks like, it says how it's going to be delivered. It's going to be delivered by the Parliament of the day to design it. So if it were to come in this time around, Parliament of the day being the Labor Party would design something. Now, if we all don't agree with how that comes out in the wash, we have the ability to change it. We have a voting right. Us as Aboriginal people, we have a right to say that doesn't do what we need it to do. We haven't done this well. We vote out that government. So it is all very much in our power. We do have the detail.
That was just kind of a side note, but my actual question was just before we're talking about like the evidence, and I have some older family members who read the newspapers, which is always a great start for getting reliable information. So where should I be sending those people to gain credible information?
On the final slide, I will show you it, okay, where I think as an academic at a university where we should be going, and I'll tell you why when we get there, but that's my own perspective, yes.
I was just going to say that ATSIC, for example, that was abolished because the government of the day said, oh, there's financial corruption, and there was. So if the Business Council of Australia had a bit of financial corruption, you wouldn't say, oh, well, we'll throw the whole thing out. We say, if there's criminal stuff happening, let's get it sorted. But you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, which is why they want to enshrine it in the Constitution, because that's it. There were a lot of good things they were able to do, and there was some few bad people in there maybe. And so you deal with that. You don't throw out the whole organisation, which doesn't happen to other organisations that are advising the government all the time. There are many advisory things, and you deal with what is really happening on the ground. And the voice won't have any power to spend any money. And, it's not a funding thing. It's they will advise government, and the government can say, no, we don't like what you're telling us, we won't do it, or yes, we do. But the government, Parliament, is who we choose year by year.
I just want to read out a comment on the Zoom from the Zoom, if I may, just to add to those points you're making. I guess it's about the differences that enshrining a voice in the country's constitution. ATSIC was disbanded at the tick of a Prime Minister's pen, whereas this proposal, the Uluru Statement from the Heart, to ensure an ongoing voice, like all governance bodies, it may change over time, but it is protected to have a voice.
There's a certain amount of protection. I think the point is there, it's in the Constitution. You can't actually remove it without another referendum. Whereas it's not like a bit of legislation that can come about it.
Yeah, thanks for that point, Elizabeth.
So I'm familiar with Nancy because I'm that era also. But
You just look younger.
in regards with ATSIC and local people being affected, when they did wipe out ATSIC, my community was severely affected by them removing ATSIC because there was an Aboriginal CDP program running here that employed Aboriginal people 2 to 3 days. We had enterprises such as the recycling centre that we were sustaining and maintaining for a few years before ATSIC got cut. And that gave my community, both men and women, school leavers, a sense of pride. They were able to get up and work 2 or 3 days for their money. They knew that if they did go to work and they wasn't going to be paid. So that whole sense of pride and building up their identity and self-esteem for not only their community but their families, their kids, that was all wiped out after ATSI was gone also. So that's just because there was, you know, some things going wrong over here didn't mean that the program wasn't working, because it worked here in Armidale for a lot of my people, which I think is the ramifications of maybe some of today's effects on my people. So that really did help the community in Armidale to be able to get up for those days and to work.
And I believe it was 370 people were employed on that program. And the stroke of a pen in Parliament, that's 370 people who were unemployed, really nothing. You know, who were part of the economy of Armidale and able to maintain that economic system.
So just because I'm conscious of your time as well, but I wonder then how many of you are aware of what we're actually voting on. So the change, if you like, in the Constitution. And the first thing I want to say is there is no plan afoot to change any of the existing wording. Nothing that's existing in the Constitution will change. What will happen is there will be an insert, a new chapter that's going to be added. So nothing that's currently there is being modified. It's simply going to be a new chapter. It's a very short chapter, as you can see, because this is exactly what it says, that in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia, so one, we're recognising that for the first time, which is really significant because we are the only country in the world which has not recognised in their constitution Aboriginal and Torres, or their First Nations people. And that in that recognition, there will be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice may make representations to the Parliament and the Executive Government of the Commonwealth on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And that's the second important point. They're not going to be talking to government about me. They're going to be talking to government about themselves, their communities, the many different communities around Australia. And lastly, the Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers and procedures. And I think that's really important. Anyone want to comment? Anyone?
I didn't realise you had it up here because I think exactly what I'm saying. It's 3 very clear points, and the bottom point is the most important thing. I think, you know, it does give actually all the detail, and every other section of the Constitution, if you read, there's no more detail than that. No one's trying to be tricky. No one's trying to trick anyone. All of the sections in the Constitution look as brief as that.
I was going to say something.
Sorry, Maria. Sorry.
Any comments?
Any other questions?
Could this make it, so for example, at the minute, there is the closing gap, which they haven't,
We haven't.
Still wide.
In fact, they're wide and medicated.
did you give an actual voice to say, hey, no, this is how it needs to work, which is probably what needs to happen.
Yeah, look, that does really need
That's right.
does really need to happen for my grandson, for my for all of our people. Like, I don't want them dying 9, 10 years before their neighbour. I don't want my grandson going to jail because of the colour of his skin, where he comes from. The history in Armidale is, I'm personally thinking that a lot of those social factors are closing the gap. They are getting wider. My grandparents never going to reach the age of 80. My mother and father will never reach. They'll be lucky to reach 70. So these gaps are widening, they are not closing, and they need to hear us, who is affecting us.
Yes.
I'm involved with AMTA, which is the local reconciliation group that's been going for 25 years, and we have a newsletter. And in the last newsletter, we quoted Julie Bishop, who is no radical left-winger or, highly respectable former foreign minister. And she said, sorry, is it on? It is fine. And she said, I believe the voice is a step in the right direction. I sat through too many of those closing the gap speeches in Parliament to sense that what we were doing was working to close the disparity and the inequality between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. In some instances, the key measures are getting worse, not better. So it's not a question of money. It's not a question of politicians coming up with policies. It's a question of giving Indigenous people the franchise to make decisions to implement policies that will work. We've got to give it a chance. And there are also examples in here of local examples. For example, a program was set up. Obviously, all Aboriginal people are concerned about the high rate of incarceration and young people going into juvenile justice, which costs about $500,000 a year for one child. So if we could stop one child for a year who goes into juvenile justice, we have $495,000 to spend. Now, if that could be spent in Armidale on programs that will help the family and the community say, here's a naughty kid, playing up, come here, kid, let's work out what's upsetting you so much, and let's get the family and the community all engaged in programs that will help that whole family work. At the moment, we take that kid away from the family, put him in a cell, police station, horrifying. But, maybe because we're parent of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, they play it sometimes. And sometimes their parents are not controlling them properly, but they all have a wider family. And so there was a program set up, it went for 1 year, and then nobody came along to refund it. The government said, oh, they're very nice, but no, there's no more funding for that. And it was working by Aboriginal people sitting down with Aboriginal extended families about a particular kid who is likely to get into trouble. We're just creating agreements.
Okay, so having looked then at the proposed changes, this is essentially what all of us are going to have to complete, because we are assuming we're all registered to vote, which means we all have to turn up and cast our vote. And all you're being asked is to vote on the words from the previous slide. Do you agree with what's being proposed to be inserted into the Constitution? If you do, you have to write yes in the box. You can't tick the box, cross the box, do anything other than write yes, which does lead me to be a little concerned about people who can't write. But anyway, if you vote no, you have to write no in the box as it's shown up here on the screen. But that's all we're voting on. We're voting on the words on the previous slide. That's it. Laura.
We know why they went for yes and no over boxes to tick. It just seems a bit silly.
They always have. We didn't change anything this time around. The tick has always been counted. So they kind of have always accommodated that in every other referendum. So yeah, I don't know. All I can say is it's not a new thing, which is another thing that's out there. I think they don't say it's a new thing, but they talk about it like, again, look, they're trying to fool us again. Yep, no, it always has been.
Any other questions on that particular thing? I believe you can pre-poll, you can go ahead of time and cast your vote as well. But I do think, specifically from my own perspective as a non-Indigenous Australian, I think the vote will be carried or not carried by non-Indigenous people. And I think that's something for us all to consider, because Indigenous people only make up 3%, around 3% of Australia's population. So we all have to vote one way or the other. The last thing I was going to show then, if you don't mind me popping on the final slide, was where to get information. And I did say I'd explain a little bit about why I think these sources are good, solid sources that you can trust. And Louise, you can have a copy of this if you want to send it out. They're all linked there if you want to have a look more. But I come back to the fact that we are all at university, whether you're a staff member or a student, we're all involved in the same pursuit, which is about the highest quality information out there. That's what we should all be involved in the pursuit of, because that's what being at university is about. And so what makes high quality information? Well, it's information that's been written perhaps by people who are researchers, and that it's put up in front of other people, their peers, those people's peers, to have a look at and say, oh, no, there's something wrong with this, or, or yeah, that's really good. So whilst we've never had access to so much information at the moment in 2023, that doesn't mean the information is necessarily the best quality information that you can use. So I refer myself and my students all the time to a site called The Conversation. Is anyone aware of The Conversation? Good. It's an online news site, an Australian online news site, and all the articles in The Conversation are written by academics from universities right around Australia. Okay, you can see what their conflicts of interest might be. You can see the areas, the fields that they're in. You can see who they receive funding from, which is useful, because if one of these links receive funding from, say, the Yes campaign or the No campaign, you might be inclined to think they may be biased in what they say. It's all there for you to see. So there's a huge number of articles already on that site. The first one, the Voice to Parliament Explained, 10 questions about Voice to Parliament, and so on. So I've just given you some there if you would like to have a look at those links. The other thing I wanted to refer back to was Sam mentioned Anne Toomey, who was here and she gave a talk. If you hop onto YouTube and type in Anne Toomey, and Toomey is spelled T-W-O-O-M-E-Y, she's got a really good video in plain English. She has a channel on explaining, just from a constitutional lawyer's perspective, what the changes to the Constitution mean for you and me. It's just really well done, because anybody can understand it, which is what I like. So there we are. And I'm going to hand over now. I've done buttons talking. Questions, comments, anything?
Could I just say one thing? It is about bringing people together. The last sentence of the Uluru Statement is, we invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. And the things that are saying this will divide us, people who are saying that, I believe, are trying to divide us and make us very self-conscious about bad stuff. And in fact, it's a movement saying we're all coming together so that us white fellas can be proud that we're part of this fabulous country, which is fabulous in many ways, especially for its democracy and its compulsory voting, so that we all have that long history and we can share it and we can adapt and live together cooperatively on this fabulous large country.
Sorry, I will make this very brief. As an Aboriginal woman, and Larissa would probably maybe agree with me, I won't speak for you. But we are often asked by non-Indigenous people what our thoughts are, what our perspectives are, to give advice. And I find that interesting. Even within my own role here at the university, we're constantly looked to provide that information, advice, guidance. That's all that is proposed with the voice. It's something I know that has been valued. So I think what this referendum is asking is how much do we really value it? It's a heavy load for Aboriginal people to carry, to constantly share that, but it's also a responsibility and one that I will take. And yeah, I ask you to consider, you know, to what degree, and as you go to vote, to what degree do you really kind of seek that input and that advice and that guidance?
Thanks everybody. I appreciate you talking about, and one of the things I've been seeing is, well, two things that I'm thinking about. One is that somebody said 85% of Aboriginal people support it. They also said that Aboriginal people are only 3% of the population. So that's 15% or 3% that is having their voice amplified in this process. So that's something to think about in terms of bridges. And then I also just look, I'm somebody that, dare I say, writes poetry. In doing that, I look at that little statement as an eloquent small piece of beautifully written poetry from Indigenous Australians, and it's a gift for us. And you know, you can put the gift in the bin, or you can do something with it, and that's absolutely your choice. But respect the words, because they're very powerful and beautifully written. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just wondering if it's time to wrap up because there's time. I really want to thank the panel. Thank you so much for such a lovely conversation. And I'm hoping that our intensive for the next sort of another few days together, and for the students online who joined in, and everyone is going to be listening to the recording, that we can actually really link what we've heard today to our studies in social work and social justice, and our core values of social work, the main one being social justice, and actually just carry on the dialogue. And I'm really grateful that you've shared those resources, because I think one of the challenges, you know, as a non-Indigenous person, when I have conversations with people, is just having the right information for me to call on, and to be able to draw on it and actually articulate the issues well, and to have really good resources, peer-reviewed resources like that is really good, so we can actually talk about it in a meaningful way and not buy into all the not buy into the problematic discussions and all the sort of high level, is it? I don't know, something like that. So thank you. I'd like to thank you all today for coming to talk with us, and thank you, Kate, for helping me organise this.
Wonderful. Can I just have one last comment? Just on what you just said there. There is a slogan out there which is, if you don't know, vote no. And I find that such an offensive slogan, regardless of whether I wish to vote yes or no, because that to me is not the point. But that slogan makes me feel as though whoever coined that slogan thinks that I'm stupid or dumb. We have access to good quality information. Let's be informed. What was the slogan you said?
In doubt, find out.
In doubt, find out. This is all I ask people to do. If you don't know, we have access to such good quality information. Let's go out and find out so that when we do cast our vote, we do it fully informed. But thank you so much for coming on too. And thank you, Louise, and everyone's.